Will Byers might become the main villain in Stranger Things 5. I know, wild, right? Well, the Duffer Brothers have been quietly building up this twist from the very beginning. Trust me, there's a lot more to it than you know, and we'll start from the sensitive child connection. There's a word that keeps coming up when people describe Will Byers. Sensitive.
He's a sensitive kid.
His mother, Joyce, calls him a sensitive kid in Season 1, explaining why he doesn't fit in with other kids. It sounds innocent enough until you realize someone else got called the exact same thing. Henry Creel's father described him as a sensitive child long before he murdered his family with his psychic powers. I don't think the Duffer Brothers waste words, and they definitely don't just give two characters the exact same descriptor unless they're drawing a parallel. Both Will and Henry are artistic, both are misunderstood by their peers. Cherry on the cake, both got targeted by the Mind Flayer at young ages. Season 4 showed us Henry's entire backstory. A sensitive, artistic kid with psychic abilities becomes Vecna. He felt different, convinced that humanity was a plague that needed to be eliminated. The show spent time explaining Henry's childhood and his growing darkness. Now, why dedicate so much screen time to a villain's origin story unless you're setting up a parallel with another character? Will has been isolated since returning from the Upside Down. Season 2 showed his friends moving on while he struggled with PTSD while under the Mind Flayer possession. Then, Season 3 gave us Mike and Lucas prioritizing their girlfriends over D&D. Season 4 pushed Will further to the margins, barely speaking, watching Mike obsess over Eleven. That's the same feelings that twisted Henry into Vecna. Vecna kept Will alive in Season 1 when he killed his other victims. Barb Holland didn't survive her encounter with a Demogorgon, yet Will lasted 7 days in the Upside Down. To think about it, we never actually see things from Will's perspective during Season 1. Every other Upside Down victim gets scenes showing their final moments. We see Barb's fear. We see what happened to other test subjects at Hawkins' lab. Will? His time in the Upside Down is mostly off-screen. We see glimpses through Joyce's Christmas-like communication, but we don't know what Will saw. It brings us to one question: what if Will wasn't running and hiding the entire time? The painting Will creates in Season 4 reveals his true feelings for Mike. This is exactly how Henry Creel expressed himself through art before becoming Vecna. Both felt misunderstood and alone. The difference is, we're supposed to think Will's art is pure and innocent, while Henry's was dark and twisted. What if Will's art is also hiding something darker? Season 5 trailer footage shows Will in distress touching his neck, that familiar warning sign that the Upside Down is near. Some shots show he's in danger, possibly being possessed again. Other frames show him looking strangely calm, almost knowing everything. His expressions don't always match someone afraid. But what exactly did the Upside Down do to him? Well, we're about to find out. Before we go on, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Now, let's talk about Will's whole story. The Upside Down Time Loop Theory, November 6th, 1983. That's the date Will disappeared. That's also the date the Upside Down got frozen in time. Season 4 revealed this when Nancy visited the alternate Hawkins and found her bedroom exactly as it looked in 1983. The Upside Down isn't just stuck showing 1983 Hawkins, it's frozen on the exact day Will vanished. That can't be random. Now, this dimension didn't freeze when 11 opened the first gate in 1979. It didn't freeze when experiments happened at Hawkins' lab. It froze on the specific day that Will Byers entered it. Let's make it simple. He's linked to that dimension. Think about what that means. The entire Upside Down reflects the moment 11 opened the gate. Every building, every street, every detail matches Hawkins on November 6th, 1983. It's frozen in Will's reality. That's not how alternate dimensions work in science fiction. Parallel worlds evolve separately and follow their own paths. The Upside Down doesn't. It's locked to one boy's experience, one boy's moment of crossing over. Vecna could have twisted that empty dimension into a dark reflection of Hawkins to match his vision. The Mind Flayer existed before Henry arrived, but he gave it form. Season 2 showed Will drawing the Mind Flayer before he consciously saw it. Joyce assumed the Mind Flayer was showing Will these images while possessing him. What if it's the other way around? What if Will was designing what the Mind Flayer would become, and the possession was actually Vecna using Will's imagination to steal blueprints? Will's been drawing since Season 1, using art to process trauma. Every sketch, every painting, every D&D map could be unconsciously shaping the Upside Down. The dimension responds to him because he's fundamentally connected to it. Vecna knows this connection and uses it, slowly turning Will from artist to architect of nightmares. The Upside Down needs Will's perspective to maintain its form. Without him, it might collapse back into the empty space 11 originally banished Henry into. Vecna can't let Will die because Will's mind could literally be sustaining his dimension. That's why the Mind Flayer possessed him specifically. That's why Vecna will target him again in Season 5. The possession that never really ended. Season 2's climax showed Joyce, Jonathan, and Nancy burning the Mind Flayer out of Will's body. They cranked the heat until Will couldn't take it, until the creature fled from his system in a cloud of black smoke. What if they didn't actually succeed? The neck tingle. It started in Season 2 during his possession, a warning that something was coming. Season 3 brought it back when the Mind Flayer returned to Hawkins through Billy. Season 4 triggered it again when Vecna opened gates across town. Every time, Will's neck acts as a psychic alarm clock, reacting to dimensional intrusions. That's not how possession recovery works. When someone is freed from supernatural influence, they don't retain connections to that force. Exorcised demons don't leave behind early warning systems. The fact that Will still experiences these sensations years later means that the Mind Flayer never actually left. A piece of it remains inside him, waiting for the right moment to activate fully. The Duffer Brothers confirm the Mind Flayer exists as a hive mind that connects all its victims and creations. The flayed citizens of Hawkins maintained links even when separated. If Will was really freed, his connection should have severed completely. Instead, he acts as a living surveillance device, detecting the Upside Down's presence across miles and dimensions. Vecna could be using Will as a spy without Will even realizing. Every time Will senses danger and warns his friends, he might also be broadcasting their locations and plans back to Vecna through their psychic link. The gang thinks Will's ability helps them when it might just make them more vulnerable. Vecna always knows where they are, because Will is his double agent. Will's isolation in Season 4 mirrors how Vecna operates. The villain targets people with unresolved trauma, distance from loved ones, feelings of rejection, and worthlessness. He enters their minds through emotional vulnerability before killing them brutally. Will checks every box. He's traumatized by years of supernatural horror. His friends have moved on, found relationships, and left him behind. He's stuck living in California, away from Hawkins, away from everything familiar. That's Vecna's perfect victim profile. The difference is, Vecna won't kill Will. He'll convert him. The Season 4 finale hints at this with Will's cryptic statements about Vecna's plans. He tells Mike Vecna's not going to stop until he's taken everything. Will says this with strange certainty, as if he knows Vecna's mind intimately. Later, he touches his neck and says they need to kill Vecna to end the horror. That sounds heroic until you consider he might be communicating Vecna's challenge to the group, delivering the villain's message, "Come fight me." Billy Hargrove spent Season 3 under the Mind Flayer's control, acting as its primary agent in Hawkins. He recruited victims and served as the creature's eyes and ears in the real world. Billy wasn't fully conscious during this possession. He was a passenger in his own body, watching himself commit atrocities he couldn't prevent. Will could be experiencing something similar, but more subtle. The theory suggests Will doesn't realize he's being used. He genuinely believes he's helping his friends, warning them about danger, contributing to their fight against evil. Meanwhile, Vecna manipulates his perceptions, his memories, his understanding of events. Will thinks he's resisting when he's actually cooperating. He believes he's recovered when he's actually still hosting a fragment of the Mind Flayer that Vecna can activate whenever necessary. Season 5 will likely force this revelation. Mike and the gang will realize Will has been compromised, that every plan they've shared with him went straight to Vecna. They'll face the heartbreaking choice between saving their friend and stopping the monster using him. Will himself might not remember his actions during these possessed periods, creating tragic, dramatic irony where he swears loyalty while unconsciously betraying everyone he loves. The most extended exposure to darkness makes this theory even more convincing. Will spent nearly a week in the Upside Down during Season 1, that's 6 full days breathing toxic air, surrounded by decay and death, hunted by monsters, completely isolated from humanity. Nobody else survived that long. Barb died within minutes. Other victims were killed immediately. Will's survival wasn't just luck or resourcefulness, it was exposure, saturation, corruption happening slowly at a cellular level. Every moment spent in that dimension changes you. Will return physically intact but fundamentally altered in ways nobody, including himself, fully understands. The Upside Down integrated itself into his mind. He can never truly leave because part of him never left. Season 2 proved this when the Mind Flayer targeted Will specifically for possession. The creature didn't choose him randomly from Hawkins' population. It recognized him, remembered him, knew he'd been affected by the Upside Down and was therefore vulnerable to deeper invasion. The vines that trapped Will in the tunnels weren't just restraining him, they were reconnecting him to the hive mind, re-establishing links that formed during Season 1. When Joyce burned the Mind Flayer out, she was treating symptoms without addressing the underlying condition. The black smoke that poured from Will's mouth was the active infection, but the dormant infection remained. You can't spend 6 days in hell and come back unchanged. You can't breathe poison for a week and exhale it all in one dramatic exorcism scene. Will's body, his mind, his soul carry permanent scars, and those scars make him the perfect vessel for Vecna's purposes. Now consider what happens when Will returns to Hawkins in Season 5. He's been in California, separated from the Upside Down's direct influence by thousands of miles. That distance created a buffer, keeping whatever's inside him dormant and manageable. Getting back to Hawkins means getting close to the gates, close to Vecna, close to the source of the infection. That proximity will activate everything sleeping inside Will, flipping switches that have been waiting years to turn on. Will looks scared, like he's racing against time before he loses control. Those aren't the expressions of someone warning about external danger. Those are the expressions of someone becoming the danger, feeling the transformation start, knowing they're about to betray everything they love and being powerless to stop it. Will Byers become Vecna's weapon? Dungeons & Dragons has been Will's identity since Season 1. He's Will the Wise, the cleric, the healer, the magic user who supports his friends and solves problems through intelligence rather than brute force. His character represents who he wants to be: thoughtful, helpful, essential to the party's success. The irony is that D&D terminology might be foreshadowing exactly what Will becomes, just not the heroic version he imagined. The Duffer Brothers structure every Stranger Things season around D&D campaigns. Season 1's Demogorgon came straight from the game. Season 2's Mind Flayer drew its name and concept from D&D lore. Season 3's Spider Monster reflected campaign storytelling about assembling powerful enemies from component parts. Season 4 introduced Vecna himself, one of D&D's most iconic villains, a lich who achieves godlike power through dark magic and betrayal. Season 5's villain should follow this pattern, pulling from D&D's vast catalog of threats. Fans have theorized about Tiamat, the five-headed dragon goddess of evil, or other cosmic entities that make Vecna look small, if the real Season 5 villain isn't someone new. What if it's Will, transformed into a D&D villain that nobody saw coming because we were all looking at the wrong mythology? This transformation wouldn't require Will gaining flashy supernatural powers. He doesn't need to shoot lasers or teleport or move objects with his mind. His danger comes from intimate knowledge of the gang's weaknesses, their strategies, their relationships. Will knows every secret Mike, Dustin, and Lucas carry. He knows exactly how to hurt them emotionally and psychologically. As Vecna's agent, Will could do more damage than any Demogorgon simply by exploiting the bonds he spent years building. Vecna's entire method revolves around psychological warfare. He doesn't just kill his victims, he torments them first, trapping them in nightmares constructed from their guilt and trauma. Chrissy relived her eating disorder and her mother's abuse. Fred relived the car accident that killed someone. Vecna understands that breaking someone's mind is more effective than breaking their body. Will knows everyone's trauma intimately. He knows Mike's fear of losing 11 and his guilt over sometimes wishing for simpler times. He knows Dustin's emotional struggles with Eddie's death. He knows Lucas struggles with balancing popularity and loyalty. He knows Max carries survivor's guilt about Billy. He knows Nancy can't forgive herself for Barb's death. Armed with this knowledge and working for Vecna, Will becomes the ultimate weapon against the people he loves. The theory suggests Season 5 will force the gang into an impossible situation. They'll realize Will is compromised, feeding information to Vecna, possibly even sabotaging their plans directly. They'll want to save him, rescue him, burn the infection out again like they did in Season 2. Vecna will ensure they can't. Maybe the possession goes too deep this time. Maybe removing it would kill Will. Maybe Will himself begs them not to try, knowing he's too far gone. This creates the darkest possible scenario for Season 5's ending. The gang might have to choose between saving Will and saving Hawkins. They might have to defeat their friend to defeat Vecna, essentially killing Will to close the gates permanently. Or they might succeed in their mission but lose Will anyway, watching him sacrifice himself or get consumed by the upside down forces he's been fighting since he was 12 years old. The Duffer Brothers have said Season 5 will feel emotionally devastating, that the ending won't be entirely happy even if the good guys win. Losing Will, or worse, having to defeat an evil Will, accomplishes that tonal goal. It brings the show full circle to where it started, with Will Byers at the center of everything, except this time, he's not the victim who needs rescuing. He's the obstacle that can't be overcome without sacrifice. Clearly, the Duffers aren't all gloom and doom. They believe in hope and heroism. Turning Will into a straightforward villain who gleefully serves Vecna would contradict their storytelling philosophy. That's why the theory doesn't suggest Will chooses evil voluntarily. He's a victim of circumstance, of exposure, of Vecna's long-term manipulation, He's not evil, he's corrupted, controlled, used as a weapon against his will. That distinction matters because it preserves Will's essential innocence while still making him dangerous. The theory also accounts for Will potentially being saved at the last moment, pulled back from the brink by Mike's love or Eleven's powers or his own strength of character. Maybe Will fights Vecna's control from inside his own mind, sabotaging the villain's plans even while appearing to serve him. Maybe his transformation into a weapon is what ultimately defeats Vecna, turning the villain's own strategy against him. The theory doesn't require Will staying evil, just that he becomes evil's instrument long enough to create real stakes and real consequences for Season 5's climax. The Duffer Brothers spend 4 seasons making us love Will. They sidelined him in Seasons 3 and 4, making us forget how central he was to the entire story. What if that was intentional? What if they were setting up the ultimate betrayal? Not of Will betraying the gang, but of Vecna's betrayal of Will finally happening. Season 5 will answer whether Will the Wise becomes Will the Weapon. For now, let's wait for it.